There is a man sitting in a hospital room right now. He has been there for 3 days. The doctors have done everything they can. His family is gathered around him, some of them praying, some of them crying quietly. And in that room, surrounded by the people who love him most, something is about to happen that every single human being who has ever lived has gone through, and that almost no one ever talks about honestly. What happens to the soul the moment it leaves the body? Not what we hope happens. Not what people say at funerals to make each other feel better. What Islam actually describes in detail, based on the words of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who was given knowledge of these moments that no human being could have access to on their own. By the end of this video, you are going to understand the journey of the soul from its final breath to its first moments in what comes after. And I promise you, it will change how you think about every single day you still have left. Welcome to Gentle Ustaz. If you have not subscribed yet, do it now and turn on the bell. This is one of the most important videos on this channel. Let us begin. We are going to go through 6 stages of what happens to the soul after death. Some of them will confirm things you already felt were true. But the 4th stage, the 4th one, is the one that most Muslims have never heard described the way the Prophet actually described it. Pay close attention when we get there. Before a person takes their last breath, something happens in the room that no one else present can see. The angel of death arrives. In the Quran, Allah tells us that He has appointed an angel of death who takes the souls of people. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, described the experience of this moment very differently depending on the person whose soul is being taken. For the person who lived with faith and righteousness, the Prophet described the angel of death arriving with a beautiful presence, accompanied by other angels carrying white silk and fragrance from the gardens of paradise. The soul of the believer is drawn out as gently and smoothly as water flows out of a container. There is no struggle. There is ease. And in that moment, the angels greet the soul with the words of peace and call it by the best names it was ever called in its lifetime. For the person who rejected faith and lived in disobedience, the Prophet described an entirely different experience. The angel of death arrives with a harsh presence. Other angels come carrying rough dark cloth. The soul does not want to leave the body. It clings to every organ, every bone, every part of the physical form it has inhabited. And it is pulled out with force, the way a metal skewer is pulled through wet wool, tearing at every fiber it passes through. The difference between these 2 descriptions is not meant to terrify anyone. It is meant to answer the question that every human being quietly carries. Is there a difference between how a righteous person dies and how others die? According to the Prophet, yes. The way we live shapes the way we leave. After the soul leaves the body, it does not simply disappear into darkness. The Prophet described what happens next in remarkable detail. The soul of the believer is wrapped in that white silk by the angels and carried upward. As it passes through the layers of the heavens, the angels of each heaven ask who this soul is. And the other angels answer by calling the soul by the best names it was ever called on earth. When the soul reaches the highest heaven, it stands before Allah. And Allah says, "Record my servants' book in the highest place and return them to the earth, because from it I created them, to it I will return them, and from it I will bring them out once more." The Prophet also described what happens to the soul of someone who rejected faith and lived in disobedience. That soul is carried upward as well. But when it reaches the first heaven, the gates are not opened. And a voice calls out, "Return this soul. Write its book in the lowest place." And the soul is sent downward. The journey upward is the same for every soul. But the welcome at the top is determined entirely by what was built on earth. After the soul has been before Allah, it is returned to the body. The Prophet described this as happening at the moment of burial. He said that when the deceased is placed in the grave and the people who buried them turn to leave, the deceased can actually hear the sound of their footsteps walking away. Think about what that means for a moment. The body is in the ground. The family is walking back to their cars and their homes. And according to the Prophet, the person in the grave can hear them leaving. That moment of hearing the footsteps fade away is described as one of the loneliest moments of the journey. The moment when the soul fully understands that the life it knew is over, that the people it loved are going back to their world, and that what comes next is between it and Allah alone. And now we come to the stage I asked you to pay particular attention to, because this is the one that the Prophet described with the most urgency. As soon as the footsteps of the living have faded, two angels arrive in the grave. The Prophet called them Munkar and Nakir, and they ask three questions. Who is your Lord? What is your religion? Who is this man who was sent to you? That is it. Three questions. And everything, the expansion or tightening of the grave, the comfort or punishment of what comes next, depends entirely on the answers. The believer answers, My Lord is Allah. My religion is Islam. He is the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And when they answer, a voice calls out, My servant has spoken the truth. Spread out a bed from paradise for them. Dress them in clothing from paradise. Open a gate of paradise for them. The grave expands as far as the eye can see. It is filled with light. And the believer rests in comfort until the day of judgment. The person who did not hold on to their faith struggles to answer. They say, I do not know. I heard people saying things and I repeated them. A voice calls out, they did not know. Spread out a bed from hellfire for them. Open a gate of hellfire for them. The grave tightens around them until their ribs are crushed together. Here is the thing that hits hardest about these three questions. None of them ask about your job title. None of them ask how much money you made or what kind of car you drove or how many followers you had. Three questions. About your Lord, your religion, and your Prophet. These are the things a person must actually know and actually live, not just intellectually, but in a way that the soul carries them even after the mind has stopped working. After the questions of the grave, every soul enters a state that Islam calls Barzakh. It is an Arabic word that means barrier or partition. It is the realm that exists between this life and the next, between death and the day of judgment. Every soul that has ever died is currently in this state, waiting for the moment when the trumpet is blown and all of creation is called to stand before Allah. The Prophet described Barzakh as vastly different experiences for different souls. The righteous soul experiences it like a deep peaceful sleep that feels like it passes quickly. One of the companions described a believer in Barzakh as someone who is shown their place in paradise every morning and every evening, being told, This is where you will be on the day of judgment. This fills the soul with joy and anticipation. The waiting does not feel long. The soul that is in punishment experiences Barzakh in the opposite way. The grave feels tight and dark. The suffering feels extended. And the Prophet said the only things that can continue to benefit a person in Barzakh after their death are three: ongoing charity that continues to produce benefit, knowledge that people continue to act upon, and a righteous child who prays for them. Everything else stops. The career ends. The reputation ends. The bank account ends. Only these three continue to reach the soul. Everything the Prophet described about the journey of the soul after death points back to the same thing. The quality of what comes next is determined entirely by the quality of what happened before. Not by performance. Not by reputation. But by the genuine, consistent, private relationship between a person and their Creator. The three questions in the grave are not a surprise exam. They are the natural result of a life lived. A person who truly knew Allah and lived for Him will answer those questions the way a person answers their own name, without hesitation, without thinking, because the answer is woven into who they are. A person who only wore the label of religion without ever building the substance of it will find that when the question is asked in the dark of the grave, the label is not enough. The Prophet said, "Remember often the destroyer of pleasures." He was talking about death. Not because thinking about death should make us miserable, but because the person who remembers that this life will end tends to live it completely differently from the person who acts as though it will go on forever. So let us bring everything together. The moment you die, the angel of death arrives, and the experience of that moment is shaped by how you lived. The soul ascends through the heavens and stands before Allah. It is returned to the body in the grave where two angels ask three questions that every soul will face. Those who can answer enter a state of peace and anticipation. Those who cannot face difficulty. Every soul then waits in Barzakh, the realm between death and resurrection, where only three things continue to reach them from the living. And all of it, every single stage, points back to one thing: the quality of your relationship with Allah right now in this life, in the days you still have. Which of these 6 stages surprised you the most? Comment below with the number. And share this video with a Muslim who needs this reminder today, because that is your ongoing charity, and it may reach you in your own Barzakh one day. Subscribe to Gentle Ustaz for more reminders like this every week. May Allah make our last words La ilaha illallah, make our graves a garden from the gardens of paradise, and gather us with our loved ones in Jannatul Firdaus.